Chapter 1081. He was the final champion of the Soul Master Battle discipline of the Star Battle Net Inter Federation competition. Pavilion Master, teachers, friends, and all of my Shrek Academy peers and mentors who have passed away. Can you see this? I won. I'm the champion, but this victory doesn't belong to me. It belongs to our Shrek Academy. The golden dragon spear that was being held aloft above his head was radiating dazzling golden light. In that instant, Tang Wulin's blood was churning violently through his veins while everything that he kept repressed within his heart was erupting in a frenzy. No matter how arduous the path ahead may be, I will continue to pursue it. My friends and I will revive Shrek Academy, and this will be the first step. I won, and I did so for the glory of Shrek. There were countless excited people standing in front of their screens, and there were just as many spectators who had been stunned speechless. At this moment, the shimmering golden man was all everyone could see. He was the champion, number 33 Golden Dragon King. Blood 1 and all of the Blood Gods were spectating the match in the hall of the Blood God Battalion, and at this point, the former Blood Nine's jaw had already dropped to the ground. He suddenly discovered that his brimming confidence had been replaced by a hint of fear. He had once thought that his victory during his next clash with Tang Wulin was assured, but that confidence had completely vanished at some point. Could he have defeated that Strength King? The answer was quite obvious. Would he be able to defeat Tang Wulin, who had just taken down that Strength King? Blood 1 wore a brooding look on his face, and no one could tell what he was thinking. Meanwhile, Blood 3 and Blood 5, who had both come from Shrek Academy, already had their fists tightly clenched. He won. As expected of the leader of the current generation of Shrek 7 monsters, there was still hope for the future of Shrek Academy. Miu Yi was also standing in front of his soul screen with a slightly dazed look on his face. In his eyes, the glowing golden figure who was missing an arm was extremely proud and resolute. Indeed, he deserved to be proud. He had won. Just as Mu Chen and Zhenhua had said, he had a knack for creating miracles, and he had just created another miracle. Junior Disciple Brother was so strong. A voice rang out from the neighboring room, and a burly man emerged in a rather sheepish manner. It was none other than the opponent whom Tang Wulin had just faced in battle, Araheng. That's right, he had been with Miu Yi this entire time, and Miu Yi had been his coach, guiding him through all of these matches. As such, he knew a considerable amount about Tang Wulin, but unfortunately for him, even Miu Yi wasn't aware of the extent of Tang Wulin's current powers. Araheng wasn't as handsome as Tang Wulin, but he still had thick brows and large eyes, and was filled with a strong masculine aura. He had a very overdeveloped physique, resembling a miniature mountain as he stood in the room. Miu Yi turned to Araheng, and said in a calm voice, "Don't let that loss weigh on you. You have too little experience compared to Wulin." Araheng rubbed his own large bald head, and chuckled. "It's alright, I don't mind losing to my junior disciple brother. I've always got a positive mindset." Miu Yi's lips twitched upon hearing this. Positive mindset? He was clearly just like a daisical. This disciple of his was perfect in every way aside from his careless personality. If Miu Yi had a choice, he would much rather pass down the body sect to Tang Wulin than Araheng. Compared to Tang Wulin, Araheng was nowhere near as wise and steadfast, but Tang Wulin was already carrying too many things on his shoulders. He couldn't contribute further to his burden. Araheng chuckled. "Teacher, fighting with junior disciple brother was really exciting. Those other people seem like they're molded out of clay. I barely touch them, and they still break. Junior disciple brother is much more durable. Can I go to find him? If I can spar with him every day, I'll definitely be able to improve faster." The most important way of cultivating the congenital secret method of the body sect was to constantly refine one's body, and the best way to do that was through battle. However, even Miu Yi was struggling to fill the role of a suitable sparring partner for Araheng. After all, this type of bodily refinement required direct physical clashes. With that in mind, Miu Yi was also quite taken with this idea. It was about time the two disciple brothers met and forged a relationship. "All right, go and cook now, Miu Yi." A voice sounded from behind Miu Yi, and his expression immediately stiffened. "Winning and losing are all part of life, so don't be too dejected," Zhenhua said as he patted Miu Yi on the shoulder. Miu Yi's lips twitched as he grumbled. "What do you mean by don't be too dejected? He's also my disciple, all right? They're both mine." Zhenhua chuckled. "All right, but when you saying that ruling would win, what happened?" "Just go and cook. Taking a loss isn't the end of the world." Rumble, rumble. Snow crashed down along the mountain faces in devastating waves, and all of a sudden, massive amounts of snow began to plummet from all of the surrounding mountains. This avalanche had been triggered by a wave of deafening cheers. In the instant that Tang Wulin became the final champion, the entire Blood God Legion had been transformed into a sea of joy. Guarding the abyssal passageway was a lonely and thankless task. They were secluding themselves in this godforsaken land, protecting the Douluo continent, as well as all of the living beings on the entire Douluo star. They had made countless sacrifices, and their daily lives were extremely bland. Now, there was finally an opportunity for the Blood God Legion to shine. That's right, the championship title of the Star Battle Net Inter Federation competition Soul Master Battle discipline belonged to the Blood God Legion. This was a great honor for the entire legion. Almost all of the soldiers who weren't on guard duty in the abyssal passageway had emerged from the barracks, and had raised their hands high above their head while cheering at the tops of their lungs. They had been oppressed for far too long. Their legion was clearly the most powerful legion in the entire federation, yet no one knew of them. On this occasion, Tang Wulin had secured the championship title, and all of them would share in his glory. In the final moments following Tang Wulin's victory, he had put away his golden dragon spear before slamming his right fist heavily into his chest as a military salute to the Blood God Legion. That's right, this was a military salute that belonged only to the Blood God Legion. They were the only ones who understood the meaning behind that action, but that was enough. Everyone's excitement had dispelled the biting chill in the entire legion, and they were even more excited for this than when the life tide had struck. Champion, champion, champion. Cheers rang out in thunderous waves, and even the surrounding avalanche couldn't dampen their excitement in the slightest. Zhang Wuyu was roaring with bloodshot eyes, Zhang Qiyue was yelling with all her might, and Long Yaxu was screaming at the top of her lungs. Ma Shan was vigorously thumping his own chest with his fist, as if he had been the one who had secured the final championship title. Ling Wuyu wore a wide smile on her face, and both of her arms were raised aloft with her fingers pointed up at the heavens. She was still waiting for Tang Wulin to secure the championship title in his upcoming Mega Battle Grand Final as well. Perhaps, he wasn't the most technically proficient Mega Pilot, but he definitely possessed the greatest overall power. That was something that she firmly believed. She believed that Tang Wulin was going to secure a double championship crown for the Blood God Legion. The Blood God Legion had been oppressed for far too long, and the entire legion had come together to vent their negative emotions on this joyous occasion. However, at this moment, the legion commander, Douluo Zhang Wanyun, only wanted to sob into his own hands. He was even slapping himself when no one was looking. The opportunity had been presented before him. Why had he given up without a fight? He had a chance to make this exceptional young man his successor, who could be more suitable than him. That old bastard, Cao Jaja, had swooped in to take Tang Wulin, and Zhang Wanyun was kicking himself. He was feeling very remorseful, but at the same time, he was also filled with pride. "Do you see this, you old military bastards? The final championship title belongs to our Blood God Legion. Even if we're not even listed as part of the military, our Blood God Legion is still the most powerful legion in the entire federation." Chapter 1082. The only place where there was any peace and quiet in the Blood God Legion was Tang Wulin's dormitory room. His blood was also churning in his veins as he listened to the raucous cheers around him, but he still chose to log out of the battle net and return to his room. He had reaped more rewards during this battle than even his battle against Sima Jinkai. This battle had truly shown him just how powerful the body sex congenital secret method was, and he was certain that if he could successfully cultivate this congenital secret method, then he wouldn't encounter any issues in breaking at least the next two Golden Dragon King seals. The congenital secret method of the body sect was most likely the most powerful body refinement method of the entire human race, so he had to try it no matter what. With that in mind, he dialed Miu Yi's sole communication number. Ring ring, ring ring, ring ring. The ringtone rang out a few times, yet no one was picking up. What was Teacher Miu Yi doing? Why wasn't he accepting the call? Tang Wulin was rather perplexed. Right at this moment, the call was finally connected. "What's up?" Miu Yi's slightly feeble voice rang out from the other end. "Teacher?" Tang Wulin asked in a hesitant manner. "It's me. Congratulations on your victory," Miu Yi said in an indifferent voice. It didn't sound like Miu Yi was congratulating him. He didn't seem to be all that happy. Tang Wulin was rather perplexed. Could this be because he had defeated his senior disciple brother? "What are you up to?" "Teacher, I'm cooking." An enraged tone suddenly crept into Miu Yi's feeble voice. Tang Wulin faltered slightly upon hearing this. "Are you all right, teacher?" Miu Yi had already calmed himself down at this point, and he replied, "It's all right, I'm just cooking for a couple of middle-aged bastards and a massive glutton. By the way, the glutton says that he really enjoyed fighting you, and that he's going to visit you." "Glutton? Is senior disciple brother with you?" Tang Wulin asked in a surprised manner. "Yes." If you called me just to tell me about your victory, then you can hang up now. I've got my hands full over here. Yu Yi grumbled. Tang Wuling hurriedly said, no, I'm not just calling to inform you about my victory. I was really stunned by how powerful Senior Disciple Brother's congenital secret method was, and seeing as I'm a direct disciple of yours as well, I was wondering if I could try to cultivate it as well. Huh. Mu Yi didn't think much of what Tang Wuling was saying at first, but he then quickly processed Tang Wuling's words before asking in a surprised voice, you want to cultivate the congenital secret method? Tang Wuling asked, will it be possible for me? Mu Yi faltered slightly, and his mood immediately began to change. Do you know how difficult the congenital secret method will be to cultivate? Tang Wuling replied, I've heard about it from you, but I possess exceptional bloodline aptitude, and my physical constitution is also very powerful. I still can't compare to Senior Disciple Brother in that area, but at the very least, I'm far superior to the average soulmaster in that regard. I feel like I might have a chance of successfully cultivating the congenital secret method. Mu Yi raised an eyebrow and thought about this for a moment before replying, you can give it a try. Are you also of the opinion that our body sex congenital secret method is very powerful? Of course. There was no way that I could have defeated Senior Disciple Brother without tricking him. Our body sex congenital secret method is definitely the #1 body refinement method in the world. If possible, I really want to try it. That was very well said. If you can successfully cultivate the congenital secret method, you'll be able to crush every future enemy who dares to oppose you. You're at the Blood God Legion, right? I'll send your Senior Disciple Brother over to find you, and he'll tell you how to cultivate the congenital secret method. However, you have to gauge for yourself whether it's suitable for you. If you can't successfully cultivate the first level, then don't force the issue. The backlash from the congenital secret method is very troublesome to deal with. However, with your powerful physical constitution, you can certainly give it a try. Just make sure you cultivate the first level before you move on to anything else. Thank you, teacher. Tang Wuling was ecstatic. The congenital secret method was definitely the best kept secret of the body sect, yet Mu Yi was willing to bestow it upon him. In a sense, he was actually more so a disciple of the Tang sect than the body sect. He had only accepted Mu Yi as his teacher, and he hadn't actually even officially joined the body sect. After ending the call, Mu Yi's dejected mood had been completely replaced by excitement, and he murmured to himself, this is fantastic. I didn't think he would take the initiative to ask me for the congenital secret method. This just goes to show just how powerful our congenital secret method is. It's a little late for him to start cultivating this congenital secret method, but with his physical constitution, there may be a chance that he could succeed. It's just that the first level involves manifesting a blood essence core, which is extremely difficult. Even with his physical constitution, it'll be a very arduous task for him. I'll get Rowing to take some spirit items with him when he goes to visit Wuling. If he can successfully cultivate the congenital secret method as well, then our body sect will truly have an opportunity to make a grand research. After cultivating the congenital secret method, he'll have no choice but to admit that he's a disciple of our body sect. Amorous Douluo, heartless Douluo, you can both eat my dust. We'll see who the little monster pledges his allegiance to when the time comes. Humph, what are you mumbling about over there? Mu Yi, is the food ready yet? Fuck. With that promise from Mu Yi, Tang Wuling was naturally in a very good mood. From the sound of it, the congenital secret method was split up into multiple levels, and the first level seems to be the most important one. Furthermore, Arahang was coming to visit him, and he was coming at a perfect time. Neither Marshan nor Jiang Wuyu were suitable sparring partners for him anymore. Arahang was extremely powerful, and his forte also lay in his strength, so he would be a perfect training partner. With that in mind, Tang Wuling was very much looking forward to Arahang's arrival. With a sparring partner against whom he could fight as his full power, he was sure that he would be able to further improve the speed of his progression. Arahang was also hoping to speed up his own cultivation by sparring with Tang Wuling. A faint smile appeared on Tang Wuling's face as he brought his hands together in front of his chest. With every flash of light within his eyes, the air would warp slightly, and he entered a meditative state. The sound of Arahang's thunderous heartbeat and the changes in his blood essence fluctuations during the battle had both provided Tang Wuling with a lot of inspiration for his cultivation. In the face of that immense pressure, he could even sense that he had developed an idea for how to cultivate his own Golden Dragon King bloodline. Furthermore, it was time for him to make further improvements on his 9 arts of the Golden Dragon. The final 3 techniques would have to be invented by him, and those would be abilities that were unique to him. He won. A faint smile appeared on Gu Yuna's face. At this moment, she was in a very good mood. He truly was becoming more powerful, and his rate of progression was even faster than what she had anticipated. It was time to go back. After participating in the grand final of the Mecha Battle Discipline, he would travel to the Scorching Basin to visit her again. My lord. A deep voice suddenly sounded. Gu Yuna's brows furrowed slightly in response. Why are you here? A black figure had appeared not far beside her in a completely soundless manner. The surrounding area immediately darkened, as if all of the light had been drawn away. My lord, the champion of that Star Battle.net competition is him, right? Are you still unable to strengthen your resolve? As you can see, he's growing very quickly, and if we allow him to continue to thrive, he could pose a significant obstacle for us in the future. After all, he can even affect you. A cold expression appeared on Gu Yuna's face. I don't need you to teach me what to do. My apologies, my lord. I only wanted to remind you that it's best to strike as soon as possible, both for the sake of our countless deceased brethren, as well as for our future survival and for our endeavor to become the masters of this continent again. Gu Yuna's expression cooled even further. I understand all that. You can go now. The black figure sighed before departing. The light in the room returned to normal, but Gu Yuna's good mood had been completely soured, and she fell silent for a long time with her brows tightly furrowed. Is our lord still unable to make up her mind? That man should definitely be in the west, and our lord returned from the west. There's no mistaking the spatial fluctuations. You go, bear lord. All right. After Tang Wuling awakened from his cultivation, an entire day had already passed. The first thing that he heard after waking up was his own powerful heartbeat. No substantial power improvements could be taken out of the Star Battle.net, but everything that had experienced during the battles would remain with him. Tang Wuling could sense that he had developed some new feelings toward the heartbeat of his own dragon core. It seemed to be rather similar to the sound of Arahang's heartbeat. It appeared that there was more room for improvement in the power of his dragon core. After taking a glance at the time, a serious look immediately appeared on his face. There was only one day separating the grand finals of the Soul Master Battle Discipline and the Mecha Battle Discipline, as no one could have imagined that one person could progress to both grand finals. As such, Tang Wuling's Mecha Battle Grand Final was about to begin. The opponent that he was going to face was undoubtedly going to be even more powerful than Bubble King. He rose to his feet before doing some stretches. He could feel that he was already in his peak condition, and he turned around before walking into his star cabin. The final match of the Star Battle.net Inter-Federation competition was finally about to begin. Chapter 1083. This was going to be the final battle. The entire Federation was eagerly awaiting the commencement of this final match on the nearest screens. To the general public, Mecha battles were even more appealing than Soul Master battles, as even normal people could pilot mechas. As long as one's physical constitution and spiritual power could satisfy a certain set of criteria, they could enroll for mecha academies. The final mecha battle was finally about to commence, and everyone wanted to see just what the most powerful mecha pilots were capable of. Ever since he had progressed to the final 16, no one saw Spear King as a genuine contender for the championship title. However, he had managed to progress through one round after another against all odds, and now he was in the grand final. His opponent had the highest odds among all of the mecha pilots in the entire competition, and he had won almost all of his matches in an extremely crushing manner. It could even be said that this man was a legend in the mecha world, and he was vastly renowned throughout the world of mecha pilots. Even the Star Battle.net was unable to hide his identity, as he was simply far too well known, and with his current powers, he could even put up a good fight against a divine grade mecha pilot. He was a man who was almost certain to become a divine grade mecha pilot in the future. Back when he was only 30 years of age, he was already a 9th rank mecha maker, which made him the youngest 9th rank mecha maker in the history of the entire Federation. Furthermore, he had already successfully constructed a divine grade mecha for someone else, and he was renowned for possessing the hands of God. He also possessed superb aptitude when it came to mecha piloting. No matter what kind of mecha he used, he was always able to bring out far more of its power than anyone else could. At the same time, he had an extremely outlandish and memorable name, and during his youth, it was a name that had earned him much ridicule. However, this name was already renowned across the entire continent at this point. His name was Wang Kalu, literally translates to King Skeleton, and he was referred to as Skeleton God. His martial soul was his own skeleton, and he had the highest odds among all mecha pilots in the entire competition. Compared Compared to him, Spear King's path to the grand final had been a lot more arduous, and there were many matches where he had only narrowly escaped defeat. However, that wasn't to say that Spear King wasn't a legend in himself. There were rumors circulating that Spear King and the champion of the Soulmaster battle discipline, Golden Dragon King, were one and the same. During the final match between Golden Dragon King and Strength King, Golden Dragon King had summoned a massive tyrant dragon soul spirit that was identical to the one Spear King had summoned in the past. So were they the same person? If so, then Golden Dragon King's immense powers as a Soulmaster would surely significantly enhance his mecha, and it would be difficult to say who was the favorite going into this match. If this were true, then this battle would be a clash between the most powerful Soulmaster and the most powerful mecha pilot in the format of a mecha battle. In just a single day, the match between Spear King and Skeleton God had been promoted all over the entire Federation, and everyone was eagerly awaiting this epic clash. Now, the grand final was finally set to arrive. Skeleton God, Wang Kalu. To put it more accurately, it should be Skeleton King, Wang Kalu. Tang Wuling sat within his resting suite and reviewed all of the information he had about Wang Kalu. This Wang Kalu's martial soul definitely wasn't just a skeleton. Instead, it was the Skeleton King. He was using his skeleton as a martial soul, which was a part of his body, but after asking Yu about him, Tang Wuling was told that those with skeleton martial souls weren't from a branch of the body sect. Instead, they came from a mysterious clan. He was a divine grade mecha maker, and even though there were far more high-grade masters in other occupations compared to forging, there were still only 13 ninth grade mecha makers in the entire Federation, and even for them, it was certainly not an easy task to construct divine grade mechas. Furthermore, crafting a divine grade mecha for someone else was more difficult than crafting one for oneself, and it was important to remember that Wang Kalu was only 33 years of age. If it weren't for the limitations of his physical constitution, he would most likely already be a divine grade mecha pilot. It was undoubtedly the case that this battle against Wang Kalu definitely wasn't going to be any easier than his battle against Arahang. The atmosphere in the competition venue was even more frenetic than he had imagined, and the spectators seemed to have already completely forgotten the incidents that had taken place during the semi-final matches. Before Tang Wuling had even emerged into the competition venue, he could already hear waves of thunderous cheers erupting outside. The same cheers were also ringing out throughout the Blood God Legion as everyone cheered on Tang Wuling with all their might. They already knew for a fact that Spear King and Golden Dragon King were the same person. Within the abyssal passageway, ding! A faint clang rang out within the deepest part of the abyssal passageway, and even the most sensitive of detection devices failed to pick up this sound. A thin crack began to appear on the core at the deepest part of the passageway, and a layer of faint light appeared on the passageway seal. This layer of light only appeared for an instant before abruptly vanishing again. Wisps of black mist began to emerge soundlessly from within the crack. This stream of mist was very feeble, to the extent that the seal was completely unmoved. The black mist formed the shape of a needle, and as it drifted through the air, there was warped light constantly shimmering around it. The black mist began to coil around, and during this process, it seemed to be winding itself around an invisible hand. The invisible hand gently pulled back, and an indistinct figure took shape within the black mist on the side of the seal that belonged to the Blood God Legion. The figure then dragged itself along the line formed by the black mist and quickly flew away from the seal. Clunk, clunk, clunk. With each and every step the mechas took, a loud clang would ring out. Every single one of the spectators had their eyes focused intently on the two mechas that were making their way into the competition venue. Tang Wuling was piloting his usual spear-wielding melee combat mecha, and the opponent that he was facing was also a melee combat mecha that was wielding a saber and a shield. The two mechas didn't look any different. They were generic mechas, after all. However, as soon as they merged, raucous cheers immediately rang out, threatening to blast the roof off the entire venue. Skeleton God, Skeleton God, Skeleton God. In contrast with the Soulmaster Battle Grand Final, virtually everyone was chanting Skeleton God's name, and no one was optimistic about Tang Wuling's chances. Tang Wuling's expression remained unchanged. He had seen Skeleton God's past competition footage, so he was naturally aware of why his opponent was so popular. Skeleton God's battle style was extremely flashy yet effective, and it was very pleasing to watch. Tang Wuling's mecha held its spear halfway up the shaft, and the spear was pointed diagonally down toward the ground as he appraised Skeleton God from afar. Skeleton God was also appraising him with intense focus, and there seemed to be some kind of invisible connection between them. It was undoubtedly the case that Skeleton God was far more familiar with mechas than Tang Wuling. This was a direct result of their differing occupations. During his past battles, Skeleton God's forte lay in his flashy combo attacks. Those attack sequences perfectly integrated power and speed, and there was almost no way to defend against them. Skeleton God was renowned as the mecha pilot to have reached the upper limit of human mecha handling skills. Otherwise, his odds wouldn't have been so high. This is grand final match of the Star Battle Net Inter-Federation Competition's mecha battle discipline. Get ready. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, begin. The electronic announcement was just as concise as ever. Following the conclusion of the countdown, Tang Wuling and Skeleton God sprang into action almost in complete unison, charging directly toward one another. The difference between them was made quite apparent right away. They were both piloting generic melee combat mechas, but in comparison, Skeleton God's weapons were heavier than Tang Wuling's. However, neither of them had activated their mecha's propellers, yet Skeleton God was half a second faster than Tang Wuling. This reflected the absolute advantage he had over Tang Wuling in terms of mecha piloting skills. Chapter 1084. What extraordinary mecha piloting skills. Tang Wuling was stunned to discover that the Skeleton God's mecha piloting skills were definitely superior to those of even Ling Wuyu. Ling Wuyu had once told him that Skeleton God's mecha piloting skills were virtually perfect, and that he was able to use any mecha to the limit of its capabilities. His skeleton martial soul was extremely practical as he could use it as his mecha's skeleton, thereby enhancing his mecha's tolerance capacity to an extremely great extent. To put it in simpler terms, he could truly become one with his mecha. That, in conjunction with his near-perfect mecha piloting skills, naturally made him far more formidable than all of the other mecha pilot participants in the competition. Now that Tang Wuling was facing him in battle, he could see that Ling Wuyu hadn't been exaggerating in her assessment of Skeleton God. The battle had only just commenced, yet Skeleton God was already half a second faster than him. The situation would naturally only worsen for Tang Wuling once the two mechas clashed. The two mechas quickly approached one another, and it was quite clear that Tang Wuling was slower than his opponent. As such, the side at which the two mechas clashed wasn't at the direct center of the competition platform, but instead, a little more on Tang Wuling's side. Skeleton God positioned his shield in front of his mecha and glided toward Tang Wuling, sending his shield crashing directly toward Tang Wuling's mecha. Tang Wuling raised his spear, and a spear projection emerged from its tip following an influx of soul power. At the same time, a vast number of blue silver emperor vines erupted from within the gaps on his mecha, and he immediately unleashed his blue silver overlord transformation. Each and every blue silver emperor vine was like a long spear that was hurtling toward his opponent from virtually all directions. This was an alternative use for his blue silver impaling array. Tang Wuling knew that his mecha piloting skills were inferior to those of his opponent, so he naturally went all out from the get-go. Skeleton God remained completely unflustered in the face of Tang Wuling's attack and reacted very quickly. His shield was still crashing directly toward Tang Wuling, but his mecha's footwork had changed. Tang Wuling felt as if his vision had blurred for an instant, following which Skeleton God's mecha, which should have been approaching him, was distancing itself from him instead. Just this maneuver alone was quite extraordinary to behold. Immediately thereafter, Skeleton God's mecha transformed into a trail of afterimages as it rushed directly toward him. The blue silver emperor vines that were thrusting through the air were also swept aside by the afterimages, and when Tang Wuling finally caught a clear glimpse of his opponent, Skeleton King's saber was already right over his mecha's head. His saber and movement techniques were both extraordinarily fast. One had to realize that there was an upper limit on the speed that these generic mechas could reach, but the Skeleton God seemed to be able to completely ignore this limit, giving Tang Wuling the impression that he was battling a Soulmaster rather than a mecha. Tang Wuling's spear was forced to the side by his opponent's shield, and his spear projection completely failed to strike the opposing mecha. Not only that, but there was an eruption of energy being released by Skeleton God's mecha, making Tang Wuling's blue silver emperor vines unable to wind themselves around the mecha. He had conducted research into his opponent, and his opponent had naturally done the same. Even though Tang Wuling was the clear underdog in this match, the fact that he had made it to the grand final was a sufficient testament to his power. In this critical juncture, it was clearly already too late for Tang Wuling to dodge, so he lowered the head of his mecha while turning it to the side. At the same time, he activated the mecha's protective barrier, and it appeared that he was going to withstand his opponent's saber strike with his mecha's shoulder. Not only were Skeleton God's movements extremely quick, they were also very light and graceful. His mecha's saber was crashing down with unstoppable force directly toward the neck of Tang Wuling's mecha. Yet right at this moment, Tang Wuling's spear suddenly took on a golden hue. A dull explosive sound rang out, and the shield that was in direct contact with his spear was immediately blasted back by a burst of vibrational force. Skeleton God reacted extremely quickly to this sudden development, drawing back his mecha, as well as its saber, before drifting toward the side. Tang Wulin's spear quivered, and a thunderous dragon's roar rang out as a massive golden dragon erupted out of the tip of the spear before pouncing towards Skeleton God in a menacing manner. Golden Dragon King! A burst of commotion immediately rang out from the spectator stands. That's right, Tang Wulin was no longer concealing his identity. This was the grand final, so there was no need for him to conceal himself any longer. If he didn't use his 9 arts of the Golden Dragon, there was no way that he would stand a chance against his opponent. As such, as soon as he forced back his opponent with his Golden Dragon vibrational explosion, he immediately unleashed his Golden Dragon shocks to the heavens. At the same time, golden light flashed from his mecha's left hand, and his Golden Dragon spear appeared in its grasp. The spear was thrust forward, and countless spear projections surged forth along with his Golden Dragon shocks to the heavens. It was his fury of the masses. He was unleashing an explosive barrage of attacks while his opponent was still unfamiliar with his abilities in an attempt to end this battle as quickly as possible. Skeleton God had clearly been caught off guard by this sudden sequence of attacks. Instead of facing the Golden Dragon shocks to the heavens head on, his mecha rapidly retreated, and its footwork appeared to be rather panicked and messy. But in reality, it was actually quite measured and following a set pattern. The mecha was moving all over the competition platform in a wraith-like manner, and it was constantly using its shield to parry the Golden Dragon shocks to the heavens from the side, thereby gradually nullifying its power and momentum. However, right at this moment, Tang Wulin's fury of the masses also arrived. The countless spear projections converged in unison, and a burst of invisible suction force erupted from the tip of the spear, making it an unavoidable attack. Skeleton God's mecha instantly slowed down significantly, and it was looking as if Tang Wulin's spear projections were going to strike at any moment. It really was Golden Dragon King. All of the spectators instantly erupted into a frenzy, and even the commentators had risen to their feet. Good heavens! What am I seeing? It's Golden Dragon King's signature attack. That Golden Dragon really is a spectacular sight to behold. Looks like our Skeleton God is in some trouble. He's encountered an unprecedented challenge. Who would have thought that the champion of the Soul Master battle discipline, Golden Dragon King, would also progress to the grand final of the Mecha battle discipline? I can now officially announce that Golden Dragon King is already the biggest winner of this entire competition. If he can defeat Skeleton God here, then he will be crowned as the dual championship king, as well as the most dominant participant in this inaugural edition of the competition. Tang Wulin and Wang Kalu completely ignored the frenetic voices of the commentators and spectators. At this very moment, they only had eyes for one another, and their sole objective was to defeat their opponent. In the face of the converging fury of the masses, Skeleton God's mecha gently swayed, and a bust of black light appeared soundlessly behind it. The layer of black light took the place of his mecha, transforming into a gigantic black skeleton that was around the same size as his mecha. This black skeleton was also wielding a saber and a shield. The saber was slashed through the air, and a streak of black light fell from the sky before striking Tang Wulin's fury of the masses. This appeared to be only a single saber strike, but what Tang Wulin felt was a saber wave instead, and it was an extremely ferocious wave. Immediately thereafter, a resounding boom rang out from the clash, and Tang Wulin's brows furrowed tightly as he discovered that in the face of his opponent's saber wave, his fury of the masses was unable to take shape. He hadn't cultivated his fury of the masses to the highest level yet, but after using it for long, he had already mastered it to quite a high degree. This was the first time that he had encountered a situation where he was unable to completely unleash his spear technique in the face of an attack from his opponent. What was that black skeleton? Was it his martial soul true body? No, that couldn't be the case. Wang Kalu's mecha was still rapidly retreating and skirting around toward Tang Wulin from the side. How could it be doing this if it didn't have a pilot? Furthermore, during a mecha battle, a soul master would automatically forfeit the match if their martial soul true body caused them to detach from their mecha. If it weren't his martial soul true body, then how could this gigantic black skeleton be so powerful? Could it be that this was his soul spirit? But could a soul master's soul spirit really be this powerful? Even a 100,000-year-old soul spirit shouldn't have been this powerful. Not only had it withstood the power of Tang Wulin's fury of the masses, the saber wave it had unleashed was threatening to completely devour Tang Wulin's attack. As such, Tang Wulin was quite perplexed about just what this black skeleton was. He had never seen Skeleton God summon this black skeleton during any of his past matches. With Skeleton God's combat prowess, he should have been able to withstand Tang Wulin's fury of the masses with his mecha alone. Yet he had chosen to summon this black skeleton instead. This indicated that he had the same thought process as Tang Wulin. He was also trying to end this match as quickly as possible. Just as the black skeleton was keeping the fury of the masses at bay, Skeleton God had already reached Tang Wulin from the side. The black skeleton was forcibly charging toward him from the front, while Skeleton God was attacking from the side using his mecha's shield and saber. Tang Wulin's mecha stomped its left foot violently into the ground, and 8 gigantic golden dragons erupted from the competition platform. At the same time, vibrational waves proliferated outward in all directions, causing both Skeleton God and the black skeleton to slow down slightly. Tang Wulin then plunged the tip of his golden dragon spear into the ground, using it as a pivoting point as he swept his right leg horizontally through the air to unleash his golden dragon whips its tail. Using a mecha to unleash these soul skills naturally wasn't all that smooth, but after taking mecha piloting lessons from Ling Wu for so long, and using his blue silver emperor vines for assistance, the attacks that Tang Wulin had unleashed were still very powerful. Chapter 1085. Skeleton God used his shield to defend his mecha, and a layer of black light appeared over the surface of the shield as it opposed Tang Wulin's golden dragon whips its tail. At the same time, he slashed his saber through the air, sending a saber projection hurtling directly toward the knee joint of Tang Wulin's mecha. While executing his golden dragon whips its tail, Tang Wulin thrust the spear in his mecha's right hand forward. Spear projections immediately erupted forth as he unleashed his fury of the masses once again. But on this occasion, the spear projections encompassed both the black skeleton and Skeleton God. The black skeleton strode forward and gripped onto its saber with both hands before bringing it downward with devastating might, as if it were threatening to part heaven and earth. A saber projection crashed down from above, disrupting the fury of the masses from the side. Meanwhile, Skeleton God's shield had completely turned black as it met the fury of the masses head on. Tang Wulin swept his golden dragon spear upward to shatter the saber projection, but at the same time, his mecha began to tumble toward the ground as if it had lost its balance. Right at this moment, he abruptly activated his mecha's propeller, sending it hurtling straight up into the air. Even though his fury of the masses had been blocked by his opponent, he had still managed to propel his own mecha upward. Skeleton God's body swayed, and it also rose up into the air in hot pursuit behind Tang Wulin. Meanwhile, his black skeleton swept toward Tang Wulin's mecha from the side like a violent tornado. His reactions, speed, and control were all exemplary. However, right at this moment, something completely unexpected to him suddenly happened. Light flashed, and Tang Wulin's mecha suddenly descended downward in a diagonal direction when it was flying upward just a moment ago, thereby completely breaking the laws of physics. The spectators could clearly see that a golden figure had appeared on the ground in the distance with a blue silver emperor vine wrapped around its body, and the golden figure was tugging vigorously on the vine to change the direction that the mecha was traveling in. Tang Wulin also had soul spirits of his own. Tang Wulin's mecha was being pulled downward by Goldsong, and at the same time, a massive black figure appeared in midair in the place of Tang Wulin's mecha. The gargantuan black figure then descended from the sky, crashing down directly towards Skeleton God and the black skeleton. The massive creature had a layer of thick and heavy dark golden scales all over its body, and it was none other than Tang Wulin's tyrant dragon soul spirit. The tyrant dragon plummeted down from above, and just its enormous body weight in freefall was an extremely damaging force. Skeleton God and the black skeleton's attack struck its body, sending countless sparks flying in all directions, but the attacks were unable to break through the tyrant dragon's defenses. Skeleton God's mecha quickly descended toward the side while the black skeleton roared as its body instantly expanded to over 30 meters tall. It then slammed its shield into the tyrant dragon's body, and the tyrant dragon lowered its head to look down at the shield that had just crashed into its chest. All of a sudden, the scales on its chest bulged outward, and the black skeleton was instantly forced backward. The tyrant dragon had never been vested in a contest of strength, except when facing the likes of Arahang, who possessed downright freakish strength. The black skeleton and the tyrant dragon landed on the ground almost at the exact same time, and the tyrant dragon's body swayed as its massive tail swept toward the skeleton with devastating force. The black skeleton wasn't backing down in the slightest. It quickly leapt up into the air before holding its saber in both hands and bringing it down upon the tyrant dragon's tail. As its body had swelled to over 30 meters tall, its saber had also expanded to over 10 meters in length, and the saber projection erupting from it was astonishingly powerful. It was looking as if the tyrant dragon's tail were going to be severed by the devastating saber strike. However, right at this moment, a resounding boom suddenly rang out from within the tyrant dragon's body. The black skeleton clearly faltered momentarily, and the tyrant dragon's massive body instantly turned into a transparent dark golden color, as if it had suddenly transformed into a gargantuan statue. Clang! The huge saber struck the tyrant dragon's tail, and the massive black skeleton was repelled backward, but the tail remained completely unscathed. The tyrant dragon raised its right foot before stomping it violently down onto the ground. Boom! A violent boom rang out, and the black skeleton was forcibly flung up into the air before immediately being paralyzed by the enormous resulting shockwaves. The tyrant dragon was unable to use Tang Wulin's golden dragon shakes the earth, but this attack was not inferior to the golden dragon shakes the earth in any way. Furthermore, all of the offensive effect of the attack was dedicated to its shockwaves, so despite the black skeleton's tremendous powers, it was still completely immobilized for a short time. The tyrant dragon's tail then reared upward and crashed heavily into the black skeleton's body, sending it flying through the air like a gargantuan cannonball and breaking at least 4 of its ribs. All of this had taken place in a very short time. The black skeleton had appeared to be extremely fearsome just a moment ago, but in the face of the tyrant dragon, it was like a vulnerable little child. Regardless of what techniques or attacks it used, it was rendered completely powerless in the face of the tyrant dragon's absolute defense and absolute power. Skeleton God was also quite stunned by this turn of events. He had just gained the upper hand over Tang Wulin, yet as soon as the latter summoned his soul spirits, the tables were instantly turned. Furthermore, it wasn't as if Tang Wulin hadn't summoned his tyrant dragon before in previous matches. However, during those occasions, the tyrant dragon was still as massive and intimidating as ever, but it didn't seem to be very bright, and it always appeared to be quite slow and cumbersome. During his match against Strength King, the tyrant dragon had been flung away in an instant, doing nothing more than delaying Strength King for a brief moment. So why was it that this soul spirit seemed to have become a completely different being during this match? It was only natural that he didn't understand what was happening because this was a figurative pistol that Tang Wulin had hung on the wall during his previous matches. Tang Wulin was unaware of the fact that Skeleton God possessed an extremely powerful soul spirit in the form of his black skeleton. This was a soul spirit that had been carefully and painstakingly nurtured by Skeleton God, and to put it more accurately, he only actually had a single soul spirit. In the beginning, this skeleton soul spirit was only of the 100-year-old caliber, and Wang Kalu had managed to make it progressively evolve through all types of methods. At present, the soul spirit had already reached the 80,000-year-old caliber, and just this one black skeleton alone provided him with as many as 5 soul skills. As for his other soul spirit, he simply gave up on it, and that was why this black skeleton soul spirit was so powerful. This black skeleton was something that had been formed following the death of a soul master who had used a special cultivation method during their lifetime. As such, it possessed a certain level of intelligence to begin with, and that was why it was able to execute so many battle techniques. However, unbeknownst to Wang Kalu, whenever Tang Wulin had used his tyrant dragon in his past matches, he actually hadn't allowed it to reveal the full extent of its power. Even in his battle against Araheng, he had intentionally made the tyrant dragon appear confounded and cumbersome. This was partially a ploy to draw Araheng into a false sense of security, and also to convince Skeleton God that the tyrant dragon didn't pose any threat to him when he reviewed Tang Wulin's past competition footage. As such, he immediately used his 9 arts of the golden dragon from the get-go to reveal to Skeleton God that he was Golden Dragon King. As such, Skeleton God would definitely think of his tyrant dragon soul spirit, but he wouldn't think much of it. Now, he was releasing his tyrant dragon at the most critical juncture and allowing it to display its full power. An unyielding soul spirit was certainly no slouch, and even with Tang Wulin's current power level, he was only able to summon the tyrant dragon for a maximum of 5 minutes. In reality, the tyrant dragon had constantly been growing along with Tang Wulin, and its true combat prowess was even superior to Tang Wulin's. Wang Kalu was quite stunned by this startling turn of events, but the battle was still in progress. Tang Wulin pointed both of his spears at Skeleton God at the same time, and right at this moment, Goldzon's body swayed, conjuring up a series of golden halos that quickly proliferated outward to encompass both Tang Wulin and Wang Kalu. It was his blue silver golden array. Despite Wang Kalu's astonishment, he was still charging toward Tang Wulin while brandishing his saber and shield. In his eyes, with Tang Wulin's shoddy mecha piloting skills, there was no way that he could defend himself, even with 2 spears. Seeing as his soul spirit was this powerful, he had to take care of Tang Wulin's true body as quickly as possible. No matter how powerful a soul spirit was, it wouldn't matter if its master were to perish. However, right at this moment, Tang Wulin's mecha suddenly lit up, and a massive purple flower appeared behind him in a diagonal direction, radiating dazzling pink light. Countless energy particles surged toward him in a frenzy, and a massive burst of suction force erupted from the ground, quickly sapping away the darkness elements that Skeleton God relied very heavily upon. Not only that, but a golden halo was also released from Tang Wulin's body before quickly spreading outward to encompass the tyrant dragon as well. The tyrant dragon immediately let loose a thunderous roar of fury as its body expanded even further. It opened its mouth, and a pillar of orange flames that was tinged with golden specks of light was blasted toward the black skeleton in the distance. Meanwhile, spear projections erupted from both of Tang Wulin's spears as he unleashed his fury of the masses. Countless blue silver emperor vines surged forth before winding themselves around the 2 massive spears, and the countless spear projections naturally took on a bluish golden hue. Crap. I can't take this head on. Skeleton God was struck by a sense of remorse. He had still underestimated his opponent in the end. Even after ascertaining the notion that his opponent was Golden Dragon King, he had still made such a grave error, and that was simply inexcusable. Chapter 1086. He still had many combination techniques that he could unleash with his black skeleton, and those techniques could even be described as Mecha Soul Fusion skills. However, he had been completely cut off from his black skeleton, making those options completely inaccessible to him. This speaking, or in other words, Golden Dragon King, had truly done an exceptional job concealing his own abilities. His only opportunity to turn the tables now was to reach his black skeleton. Brilliant black light abruptly erupted from his saber, and his soul power fused perfectly with his mecha. The shield then suddenly exploded, transforming into a massive black light barrier in front of him. At the same time, he was controlling his mecha to rapidly retreat by executing a profound movement technique. It would definitely be unwise to continue to clash with his opponent head-on under these circumstances. Boom. The black light barrier was shattered, and the spear projection hurtled through the air. At the same time, a burst of black light suddenly erupted from the ground before transforming into a series of golden halos that ensnared Skeleton God's mecha within. At the same time, a vast expanse of blue silver emperor vines rose up from the competition platform. Immediately thereafter, the tyrant dragon slammed its tail onto the ground once again, and Skeleton God's mecha was instantly immobilized for a short time by the resulting violent shockwaves. A loud dragon's roar rang out, and a substantial golden dragon head appeared in front of his mecha pilot room, appraising him with a pair of ferocious eyes before rushing forward with devastating force. Boom. Even with Wang Kalu's physical constitution, he was still struck by a rush of dizziness in the face of such a severe impact. At this point, the countless spear projections had already converged and arrived. The tyrant dragon's true power wasn't the only thing that Tang Wulin had been hiding. Even the tyrant dragon had evolved to such an extent. Goldzon was his first soul spirit, and it had been with him ever since he first awakened his Golden Dragon King bloodline, so it was certainly no slouch, either. Bind, Blue Silver Impaling Array, and Blue Silver Golden Array were all abilities that Tang Wulin had bestowed upon it. Furthermore, it had been most heavily affected by Tang Wulin's Golden Dragon King bloodline, so it had also mastered some elements of Tang Wulin's 9 hearts of the Golden Dragon. This was the final trump card that Tang Wulin had prepared for Skeleton God. Furthermore, Tang Wulin still had his 100,000-year-old soul spirit behind him. This was a beautiful silk tulip that possessed intelligence that wasn't inferior to that of a human, and it was also able to support Tang Wulin with its devouring heaven and earth. During these 2 grand final matches, Tang Wulin had perfectly displayed to everyone the notion that intelligence was also a crucial constituent element of one's powers. Of course, it was hard to say how many people had actually managed to grasp this lesson. In the face of the many restrictions and attacks that Tang Wulin had unleashed upon it, Skeleton God's mecha exploded violently as if it had been struck by a ninth-grade soul missile. A massive skeleton was revealed within the mecha, and it was clearly Wang Kalu's martial soul true body. If this were a battle of life and death, Tang Wulin's attacks may not have been enough to kill him. However, in the instant that his mecha was destroyed, the match was already decided. The black skeleton was being completely dominated by the tyrant dragon's fiery breath, and it couldn't even rise to its feet. In the end, it could only transform into a stream of black energy that fused into Wang Kalu's skeletal body. There was a ball of green flames dancing within each of Wang Kalu's eye sockets, and he was appraising Tang Wulin with an intense gaze. He looked at the 2 spears that had punctured through his body, and his teeth clattered as he said, "You deserve to win. I look forward to our next encounter." Light flashed, and Wang Kalu disappeared into thin air. A golden crown then appeared above Tang Wulin's head, indicating that he was the champion. An enormous burst of force suddenly erupted from behind Tang Wulin. His tyrant dragon had clamped its fang down onto his mecha before flinging it up into the air. Tang Wulin adjusted the positioning of his mecha in midair, thereby allowing it to land on top of the tyrant dragon's head before he pointed both of his spears up at the heavens. I won. The Mega Battle Championship title is also mine. It was undoubtedly the case that not only was Wang Kali superior to him in terms of mega piloting skills, all of the opponents that he'd encountered during the past few rounds had superior technical skills compared to his. However, the abilities of the Soul Master still had an extremely important role to play, despite the fact that these were technically mega battles, and he had proven himself to be the most powerful mega pilot overall. This was the final battle of the Star Battle.net Inter Federation competition, and during the past few months of competing, both Tang Wuling's powers and confidence had been significantly elevated. After facing one powerful being after another, he had truly found himself and proven to himself that he was the most powerful being in the entire Federation below the 3-word Battle Armor Master level. It didn't seem all that long ago when he had been so envious toward that 3-word Battle Armor Master who had saved him and his friends from the powerful evil Soul Master that had attacked them following the destruction of that Soul Train. Now, he was confident that he was just as powerful, if not superior in power to that man. He was taking one firm stride after another toward the very pinnacle of this world. Douluo, can you see this? Wait for me. I'll definitely become powerful enough to protect you. Tang Wuling held tightly onto the spears in his hands, and at this moment, he wanted to throw his head back and roar to the heavens to vent his pent-up emotions. He couldn't wait to inform Guyuna of this good news. He couldn't wait to return to her side and hold her in his arms. For the very first time, he truly felt that he finally had the power to protect the one that he loved, and he also saw the first rays of hope for the revival of Shrek Academy. Following a brief silence, all of the spectators erupted into thunderous cheers. They were no longer chanting Golden Dragon King or Spear King. Instead, it was Dual Champion King, Dual Champion King, Dual Champion King. The raucous cheers and the electrifying atmosphere ignited the blood within Tang Wuling's veins and set his heart alight. All of his pain and frustration was released to his heart's content. How could he not be proud of himself? At this moment, there were countless people in the Douluo Federation who were sitting in front of their soul screens, living vicariously through the almighty figure on the competition platform and extending toward him their unreserved praise. At this moment, the Star Battle.net took root deep in everyone's hearts, especially in the hearts of Soul Masters. If I work hard enough, will I be able to participate in the next edition of the competition? The Blood God Legion had already been transformed into a sea of joy. All of the accumulated snow had already tumbled down surrounding mountains the day before, so no further avalanches were triggered, but the thunderous cheers were clearly audible even from a few mountains away. Everyone was chanting the name of Dual Champion King at the top of their lungs. Right at this moment, a black vortex silently appeared deep within the abyssal passageway, far away from the seal. Wisps of black energy were seeping out of the cracks on the seal before surging toward the vortex, expanding it further and further, and there were faint traces of purple lightning flashing within the vortex. A massive inky black hand slowly extended out of the vortex, and immediately thereafter, powerful abyssal aura fluctuations erupted forth in a frenzy. Beep, 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 beep. A loud and piercing siren rang out across all corners of the Blood God Legion, just as everyone was celebrating to their heart's content. Zhang Guanyun, Blood One, and all of the other powerful beings within the Legion were all sitting in front of soul screens, witnessing the creation of history, and the sirens that had abruptly rung out startled everyone. Zhang Guanyun and the Blood Gods immediately departed from the Blood God Battalion before quickly traveling toward the abyssal passageway. Boom. A violent boom erupted deep within the abyssal passageway, and an enormous figure appeared. This was a monstrous creature that was over 100 meters tall with 6 sharp claws. Its entire body was covered in a black enamel-like substance, and there was also dark red lava-like liquid flowing down all over its body. Chapter 1087. As soon as it appeared, the size of the black vortex expanded by around twofold, and a series of 4-clawed bats and 6-clawed bats rushed out from within it. The main passageway was the widest of all the abyssal passageways, and these abyssal creatures instantly surged out into this main passageway in a frenzy. An illusionary figure appeared beside the gigantic 6-clawed demon emperor, and it whispered into the demon emperor's ear, "We've completed our mission, so the rest is up to you. Kill and destroy to your heart's content. Bring the abyssal aura to this world." Howl. The 6-clawed demon emperor threw its head back and roared to the heavens. A series of dark red halos proliferated from its body, encompassing all of the 4-clawed and 6-clawed bats, making their bodies expand dramatically in size while a bloodthirsty light appeared in their eyes. They rushed forth in a frenzy, and at this point, all of the soul weapons that were situated at the exit of the abyssal passageway had already begun to fire automatically. A series of soul lasers and soul missiles formed a massive net that struck down one abyssal creature after another. In the face of the ferocious barrage of soul laser attacks, countless abyssal creatures were destroyed before their energy returned to the abyssal passageway. However, even more abyssal creatures were rushing out at an astonishing speed. Only then did the Blood God Legion soldiers who were guarding the branch passageways react to the situation, but all of their heavy artillery was situated within the branch passageway, so there was no way for them to access it. Quick! We have to go and guard the exit of the passageway. A series of commands were issued, and one flashing mecha after another rushed toward the exit of the abyssal passageway. They quickly retreated as the barrage of soul lasers kept the abyssal creatures at bay, then formed a defensive line at the exit. This attack had come far too abruptly, to the extent that they had been given no time to prepare. Almost all of the soldiers of the Blood God Legion were celebrating Tang Wuling's dual championship crown just a second ago, yet now, they were suddenly being struck by a major crisis. Boom. A mecha was latched onto from behind by a 6-clawed bat. The bloodthirsty 6-clawed bat tore at the mecha's barrier in a violent frenzy while a dozen or so 4-clawed bats also quickly converged toward it. Long live the Legion! A cry that was filled with grief and indignation rang out from within the mecha, and in the next instant, the mecha self-detonated, exploding into a massive fireball that engulfed all of the abyssal creatures around it. All of the soldiers of the Blood God Legion knew that if they were to fall into the hands of the abyssal creatures, their energy would become a part of these abhorrent creatures. As such, all of the mechas of the Blood God Legion were fitted with self-destruction mechanisms. Even if they couldn't defeat their enemies, they definitely weren't going to allow their life force energy to be taken. One mecha after another exploded before they could rush out of the exit of the passageway, and it was their heroic sacrifices, along with the barrage of attacks being unleashed by the automatic soul weapons, that were buying their comrades an opportunity to survive. The vice commander of the Iron Wolf looked on with bloodshot eyes as one comrade after another lost their lives to this inexplicable crisis. His heart was burning with fury as he roared, "Hold them back! Keep these bastards back! We can't let them rush out of the passageway no matter what." No one knew how the seal that had remained unbroken for several millennia had suddenly been broken, thereby allowing so many abyssal creatures to emerge from the main passageway. It was undoubtedly the case that this was the largest abyssal tide in the history of the Blood God Legion, and it could even compare to the abyssal tide that had taken place over 6,000 years ago, when the abyssal plane had suddenly descended upon this world. If they couldn't defend the abyssal passageway, then countless human lives were going to be lost, and the entire continent would be in grave danger. Compared to 6,000 years ago, human technology had made rapid advancements, and mechas and soul weapons were already far more powerful than they were in the past. However, the horror of the abyssal creatures had left an extremely dark chapter in the history of the continent, and they had to keep these creatures at bay no matter what. Aside from the soldiers that had self-detonated their mechas, everyone else had finally managed to retreat out of the passageway. They didn't flee from the scene. Instead, they immediately retaliated, supplementing the defensive measures that were already in place at the exit of the main passageway. At this moment, there was only a single thought in the hearts of all of the Blood God Legion soldiers. They had to keep these abyssal creatures at bay and prevent them from leaving the abyssal passageway at all costs. During this brief period of time, over 400 of the 3,000 Blood God Legion soldiers that were guarding the passageway had perished. This was almost the same number as the total death toll of the past century combined. It was undoubtedly the case that an extremely heavy blow had been dealt to the Blood God Legion. The soldiers looked on as one comrade after another self-detonated to hold the abyssal creatures at bay, and tears were shimmering in their eyes as they gritted their teeth with all their might. All of their excitement in response to Tang Wuling's double crown had been completely replaced with fury. They were unleashing attacks with all their might to keep their enemies at bay, and one abyssal creature after another was being reduced to streams of energy that flew back into the abyssal passageway. In contrast, there was no reviving the comrades that had lost their lives here. Developing a Blood God Legion soldier was far from an easy process, yet following the deaths of these abyssal creatures, their energy would be recycled, and they would soon be reborn as new abyssal creatures. All of the Blood God Legion soldiers were aware that this was the case, but they couldn't do anything aside from opposing these enemies with all their might. Even as they did so, their hearts were filled with despair. Over 6,000 years ago, virtually all of the most powerful beings on the entire continent at the time had joined forces to force these abyssal creatures back into their plane, but even then, extremely heavy casualties were suffered. At this point in time, there were only less than 30,000 soldiers in the entire Blood God Legion. Would they be able to hold back this enormous abyssal tide? No one knew, but every single one of them was doing their best. This was a battle to the death, and no one tried to escape as they knew that if their defensive line were to be bypassed, no one would be able to escape. All of the soldiers of the Blood God Legion had witnessed just how fearsome these abyssal creatures were, and it was exactly because of this that they were even more motivated to protect their home. Furthermore, the vast majority of them had their entire families in the Blood God Legion base. If they were to back down now, their families would undoubtedly be slaughtered in brutal fashion. Sirens were blaring throughout the entire Blood God Legion base, and one group of white figures after another were traveling toward the abyssal passageway in an orderly manner, requesting reinforcements. Requesting reinforcements. A vast number of abyssal creatures have emerged from the main passageway, and we desperately need large-scale weaponry on the scene as quickly as possible. The request for reinforcements had already been made, and the vice commander of the Iron Will Corps was hovering in his black mecha above the exit of the abyssal passageway, looking down at the abyssal creatures below him with a wary expression. It was undoubtedly the case that the exit of the main passageway had the most powerful defenses, and in the face of the devastating crossfire, even these bloodthirsty abyssal creatures were unable to immediately break through the defensive line. However, the expression on the vice corps commander's face was progressively becoming grimmer and grimmer as through the illumination of the soul lasers and soul cannon blasts, he could see that the number of abyssal creatures emerging from the abyssal passageway was still constantly increasing. In the beginning, there were only 4 clawed bats and 6 clawed bats flying out from within the passageway, but now, there were also already some reptilian abyssal creatures that were rushing out along the sides of the passageway, and there were even more abyssal creatures looming in the distance. The more massive abyssal creatures were all looking on from down below with cold expressions on their faces. They were in no hurry to charge out, and it was quite clear that they were waiting for something. Hell! A deranged roar suddenly erupted from deep within the abyssal passageway. Immediately thereafter, the abyssal creatures down below quickly parted, and the gargantuan 6-clawed demon emperor emerged, surrounded by countless abyssal creatures. Chapter 1088. It suddenly thrashed violently, and countless dark red balls of light erupted forth, hurtling directly toward the exit of the abyssal passageway. At the same time, a pair of massive bat wings spread open on its back, stretching to a wingspan of over 200 meters. It flapped its wings vigorously and abruptly flew toward the exit of the passageway, put the defense system into overdrive. The vice commander commanded without any hesitation, but at the same time, his heart had completely sunk. It was undoubtedly the case that this gargantuan being definitely wasn't a normal abyssal creature. At the very least, he had never seen an abyssal creature like this before, and that indicated that this was very likely one of the 108 abyssal emperors. Furthermore, this was not just a projection, its actual body had descended upon this place. Each abyssal emperor was at least as powerful as a hyper Douluo, and they possessed bodies far more powerful than those of humans. Violent explosions erupted, transforming everything down below into a fiery red color. The balls of light released by the 6-clawed demon emperor were all targeted by soul lasers, and its massive body also crashed into the oncoming soul lasers. Soul lasers and soul cannon blasts fell upon it before exploding into balls of fire, turning its body bright red, and also instantly hampering its upward momentum as it made its ascent. However, it was also managing to shield the abyssal creatures behind it from most of the oncoming attacks, and vast hordes of abyssal creatures quickly rose up from around it. Use the high explosive bombs. The vice commander of the Iron Will Corps quickly commanded. Balls of scorching white light exploded down below, encompassing the entire abyssal passageway. The 6-clawed demon emperor was indeed very powerful, but in the face of such concentrated barrages of attacks, even it was only able to last less than 20 seconds before its massive body plummeted downward to evade a large number of soul lasers and soul cannon blasts. The vice commander of the Iron Will Corps heaved a long sigh of relief. The defensive measures that had been set up here hadn't gone to waste. This defensive line had been created with the intention of targeting demigods. Now, he could only hope that reinforcements could arrive on the scene as soon as possible. After all, the energy reserves were limited, and only with a sufficient supply of energy could the defensive line continue to unleash such enormous bursts of power output. Looking on at the streams of black energy that were being absorbed back into the abyssal passageway, there was no sense of achievement whatsoever in the vice corps commander's heart. The biggest problem that had plagued the Blood God Legion was the inability to truly destroy these abyssal creatures. If they could actually destroy these beings, then the power of the entire abyssal plane would have been significantly worn down during the past 6,000 years. Right at this moment, groups of Blood God Legion soldiers appeared in the distance, along with all types of equipment and machinery. They quickly began to get to work, replacing the batteries, replenishing energy, and taking over the defensive positions littered all around the passageway. More soul cannons were being set up, and more soldiers joined in on the defensive efforts as one mega after another surrounded the exit of the main passageway, forming a strict formation that was ready to plunge into battle at any moment. What's the situation like? A massive mega descended from above before arriving beside the vice corps commander. The vice corps commander finally heaved a sigh of relief upon seeing this man, and he replied, "We've managed to hold them off for now, but more than 4 battalions worth of our brothers have fallen." What? Marchand was stunned to hear this. The emergency sirens immediately made him realize that an abyssal tide had most likely struck, as only abyssal tides could trigger such loud sirens. However, never did he think that things would be this serious. This was roughly equivalent to the total number of Blood God Legion soldiers who had fallen during the past century. One had to realize that all of the Blood God Legion soldiers are elites among elites, and the fact that so many of them had perished in such a short time was making his heart throb with pain. Furthermore, the main units guarding the passageway at this point in time came from none other than his Iron Will Corps. Those bastards! Marchand roared in a furious voice. The vice corps commander was clearly quite familiar with Marchand's short temper, and he hurriedly said, "Commander, now's not the time to be letting our emotions get the better of us." The situation on this occasion was very bizarre. For some reason, these abyssal creatures came from the seal in the main passageway. Something like this has never happened in the past 6,000 years. It was exactly because of this that we were completely caught off guard, and many of the brothers had to self-detonate to keep the enemies at bay. Let's guard the exit to the best of our ability and wait for the Legion commander and the Blood Gods to get here. Marchand's aura was clearly a little unstable. He had a fiery temper, but he was very good to his subordinates and was a respected and revered figure among the troops of the Iron Will Corps. However, close to a third of his brothers had fallen here. How could he continue to remain calm? "I'll kill these bastards." Marchand raised a hand and removed the massive mace that was attached to his mecha's back. It was quite clear that the vice corps commander wasn't going to be able to stop him. Right at this moment, a figure suddenly appeared beside him. This was a human who wasn't in a mecha, and he immediately grabbed onto the shoulder of Marchand's mecha. The huge black mecha instantly faltered in midair and was unable to rush forward. "Calm down, you idiot. Now's not the time for you to lose your cool. This situation is indeed very bizarre. Your top priority now is to command your troops." The deep voice seemed to possess some kind of magical quality that instantly made Marchand calm down. "Legion commander, you have to avenge our brothers." Marchand's voice was trembling as he spoke, not from grief, but from extreme rage instead. Zhang Wanyu nodded before patting Marchand's mecha. "Go and command your brothers. There will come a time for you to fight these abyssal creatures to your heart's content." "Yes." Marchand yelled before retreating with his vice corps commander. Zhang Wanyu was in his usual military uniform complete with his shimmering general epaulets, and with his arrival, it naturally became his duty to command all of the Blood God Legion troops present. Following his arrival, the defensive line also clearly became more organized and less chaotic. Even the emotions of all of the soldiers present had become a lot more stable. This was the effect of Zhang Wanyu's charisma. He had been at the Blood God Legion for over 60 years, and he was the psychological pillar of the entire Legion. It was exactly due to the fact that he was the Legion commander that the Blood God Legion had developed such a high level of cohesion, making it the most powerful it had ever been during the past 6,000 years. Following the retreat of the 6-clawed demon emperor, the charging abyssal creatures were forced to fall back a little, and Zhang Wanyu began to issue a series of commands, following which the offensive output from the soul lasers and soul cannons also lessened. They had to conserve energy. More and more defensive equipment of all types were delivered to the scene before quickly being set up. During the past 6,000 years, the Blood God Legion had done countless preparatory work to guard against the abyssal plane, and this included everything that had been set up within the abyssal passageway. Aside from the original defensive forts, there were also many foundational structures that had been erected. As soon as the defensive soul tools arrived on the scene, they were able to be integrated with these foundational structures to complete a large-scale defensive fort. Groups of soldiers were quickly split up before getting into position without requiring any instructions from Zhang Guanyun himself. A series of figures also quickly began to approach him. Blood One appeared soundlessly beside Zhang Guanyun with his brows tightly furrowed, and even without an explanation from Zhang Guanyun, he could tell that there was something amiss about this situation. The current situation was completely unexpected to them. The last abyssal tide had only just concluded not long ago. How could the abyssal plane be unleashing another full frontal assault so soon? Through the surveillance devices, they had already ascertained the situation here before arriving on the scene, so they knew that the situation was very bad. The main issue was that they had no idea why these abyssal creatures were emerging from the main passageway. If they couldn't remedy that issue, then more and more abyssal creatures were going to emerge from the main passageway in relentless waves. No matter how much energy reserves they had, it was always going to be completely exhausted at some point. Abyssal creatures couldn't actually be killed. Their energy could constantly be recycled, which meant that there was no end to them. With the Legion's energy reserves, Zhang Guanyun was confident that they could keep the abyssal creatures at bay for 3 months with no issues. But what would happen after those 3 months? Furthermore, this attack was completely different from previous abyssal tides, and the main difference was that an abyssal emperor had appeared. Among the 108 abyssal emperors, the 6-clawed demon emperor was ranked quite low, but the issue was that it had appeared here in its true form. This would have been impossible in the branch passageways. 6,000 years ago, the human race had set up this seal in the main passageway specifically to keep the 108 abyssal emperors from crossing over to this world. As long as none of those emperors appeared, the Blood God Legion and the Blood God Battalion's powers were more than enough to take care of all of the other abyssal creatures. However, now that a 6-clawed demon emperor had appeared, were there going to be even more powerful abyssal emperors to follow? They didn't know just exactly how powerful the abyssal emperors were, and against enemies of a certain power level, Soul Laser and Soul Cannon simply failed to pose much of a threat. Should we request for assistance from the Federation and request reinforcements from the Spirit Pagoda and the Battle God Hall? Blood One asked. Chapter 1089. Zhang Guanyun replied in a grim voice, "We've already sent out a request for reinforcements, but it'll take them a while to get here. Even the reinforcements from the Battle God Hall will take 10 days to arrive. On top of that, the main problem that we're facing is that we don't know what's wrong with the seal. Even if the Battle God Hall reinforcements arrive on the scene, we can only play to these abyssal creatures' strengths by engaging them in a prolonged battle, and that would be greatly disadvantageous for us." Blood One's brows were tightly furrowed. There were simply too many abyssal creatures down below, and no one knew how many abyssal emperors were going to appear later on. If they couldn't advance deep into the abyssal passageway, then they wouldn't be able to ascertain what was wrong with the seal, and this seemed to be an irresolvable conundrum. This crisis had struck extremely abruptly, and it had caught them completely off guard. Let's just wait and see if any other abyssal emperors will appear aside from the 6-clawed demon emperor. If not, then we have to venture into the abyssal passageway to conduct an investigation. Blood One said with a grim voice. This investigative duty would undoubtedly have to fall on his shoulders. Zhang Guanyun nodded and said, "You go and rest for now. I'll call for you when your services are required." "All right." Blood One gave a concise reply before retreating to the outskirts of the passageway, where he joined the other Blood Gods in silent seated meditation. During the past 6,000 years, the Blood God Battalion had already developed perfect strategies against the abyssal passageway, and it would be impossible for the abyssal creatures to breach their defensive line in a short time. Over 20,000 Blood God Legion soldiers had already arrived nearby, and they were ready to substitute their comrades at any time. All of the soldiers who weren't engaged in battle were meditating while slowly injecting their soul power into the batteries as a backup energy source. The soul power within the human body could be endlessly replenished, but of course, this also had its limits. However, they had no choice but to do this under the current circumstances. This was something that they had simulated countless times, and all of them had learned to inject their soul power into the batteries while expending as little energy and spiritual power as possible. Tang Wolin was still full of excitement as he logged out of the battle net, and his first thought was to visit Yuna. He emerged from his star cabin, and just as he was preparing to put on some clothes before visiting Blood One to apply for some leave, he was met by the sound of blaring sirens. Tang Wolin was quite startled to hear this, and in the aftermath of the battle that he'd just endured, it took him a few seconds to realize what was happening. Was something happening over at the abyssal passageway? This was quite an astonishing notion to Tang Wolin, as the last abyssal tide had only just concluded not long ago, and during his recent trip deep into the abyssal passageway, he hadn't discovered any signs of abyssal creatures aside from that possession. So how could this possibly be happening? He was a soldier of the Legion and also the incumbent Blood 9 of the Blood God Battalion, so despite his confusion, he still immediately sprang into action. He quickly put on his military uniform and rushed out of his dormitory room, then immediately donned his suit of 2-word battle armor, flapping his wings with all his might as he flew toward the abyssal passageway. He could already hear deafening booms and feel the tremors running through the entire mountain ranges even from quite a distance away. As expected, something really was happening in the abyssal passageway, and judging from the concentration of the soul weapons blasts that he could hear, there seemed to be a very severe problem. He flapped his wings vigorously, and the Legion base wasn't far away from the abyssal passageway, so he was soon greeted by the sight of virtually the entire Legion surrounding the exit of the abyssal passageway. A series of huge soul tools had been positioned around the abyssal passageway, and Zhang Guanyun was hovering in the air directly above the passageway with his hands clasped behind his back, inspecting the situation unfolding within the abyssal passageway down below. He also immediately caught sight of the Blood Gods of the Blood God Battalion, including the former Blood 9 that he had dethroned. All of them were sitting at the closest location to the passageway and were engaged in seated meditation. Blood 1 suddenly raised his head as if he had sensed Tang Wulin's arrival. He cast his gaze toward Tang Wulin's direction before gesturing toward him. Tang Wulin hurriedly flapped his wings and descended from the sky. His arrival naturally attracted the attention of many of the Blood God Legion soldiers, and despite the tense atmosphere that was permeating through the air, expressions of excitement still appeared on many people's faces at the sight of him. This was their Blood God Legion's Golden Dragon King and Dual Champion King. Tang Wulin's arrival was undoubtedly very effective in boosting everyone's morale. They all automatically neglected his nickname of Spear King, as Golden Dragon King was far more badass of a title. Tang Wulin landed beside Blood 1 before asking in a low voice, "What happened, Senior Blood 1?" The expression that was currently on Blood 1's face was rather perplexing to him. He seemed to be very excited for some reason. "I didn't even get a chance to create an opportunity yet, but the abyssal creatures have brought themselves right to our doorstep. They've come a little early, but we still have to do our best to take advantage of this opportunity." Tang Wulin was completely befuddled by what Blood 1 was saying. "What do you mean?" Blood 1 smiled and said, "From now, stay by my side and do everything that I tell you to do. You can use your Golden Dragon Spear right now, right?" "Of course." Tang Wulin nodded in response. "All right, then let's wait for now. Rest so you can return to your peak condition. I'm sure that grand final match must have taken a lot out of you." "Yes." The matches in the Star Battle Net didn't actually expend one's soul power in the real world, but they were always quite mentally taxing. In particular, this was a grand final, so he had been very tightly wound the entire time. A deafening battle was taking place not far away, but Tang Wulin still quickly entered a meditative state to facilitate mental recovery. Meanwhile, Blood 1 raised his head to look up at Zhang Guanyun, and his lips trembled slightly as if he were transmitting his voice in a soundless manner. Zhang Guanyun turned to look at him before taking a glance at Tang Wulin, who was sitting beside Blood 1, and he immediately gave Blood 1 a quick nod. Down below, the battle against the abyssal creatures was becoming more and more intense. More and more abyssal creatures were joining the battle, and in the beginning, most of the abyssal creatures that appeared were only capable of engaging in melee combat, so they could only withstand the attacks from the Blood God Legion with their bodies. However, as time passed, some abyssal creatures that were adept at unleashing long-range attacks also appeared. They began to use their long-range attacks to oppose the soul lasers, and soul cannons in order to create opportunities for the melee combat-oriented abyssal creatures. The six-clawed demon emperor hovered in midair while issuing commands to its subordinates. It was gently flapping its wings, and it looked as if it could unleash a full-force attack at any moment. Half an hour had already passed since the commencement of this abrupt abyssal tide. Deep within the abyssal passageway, the black vortex was still expanding in size, and the streams of energy being released by the bodies of the destroyed abyssal creatures didn't return to the abyssal plane as they normally did. Instead, they were absorbed by the black vortex and became a part of it, thereby causing it to expand further and further. More and more abyssal creatures began to emerge as the vortex continued to enlarge. If Jiang Wangyun could see what was happening deep within the abyssal passageway, he would definitely lead his troops to charge into the passageway at all costs in order to destroy this vortex and fortify the seal again. Unfortunately, he was completely oblivious to all of this, and as such, he could only choose to adopt a conservative course of action. A burst of bright light flashed through the air, and another figure slowly emerged from deep within the black vortex. This was a creature with 8 legs and a body that was divided into 3 segments. Its head was the largest of those segments, and that segment was roughly circular in shape. Its mouth was extremely large with 2 pincers protruding from it, and there were 2 gently swaying feelers on its head, each of which was several dozens of meters in length. Any of the weaker abyssal creatures around it would immediately explode into mist when coming into contact with its feelers, and those streams of mist would then be absorbed into its body through those feelers. Chapter 1090. Its 8 legs were constantly exerting force into the ground, and it had to expend a lot of effort before it could drag itself out of the vortex. It was as if there was some kind of enormous suction force pulling back on it from behind. It raised its head to look up at the six-clawed demon emperor, which was hovering in midair and concealing everything down below, and the enormous ant-like abyssal creature flashed suddenly, adhering itself to the side of the abyssal passageway. The front end of its massive head suddenly took on a corkscrew shape before he rammed it into the wall on the side of the passageway. As it did so, its corkscrew head suddenly began to rotate at a rapid speed. Clang! A loud noise rang out, and large ripples of light immediately appeared on the surface of the passageway. The ripples proliferated outward, and the seal on the underside of the passageway immediately lit up. The giant ant was sent flying before shaking its own head, seemingly in a slightly dizzy and disoriented manner, and it mused to itself in a human language. The seal that the humans set up is just as annoying as ever. Even if my true body were to descend upon this place, I wouldn't be able to break this seal. It looks like the only way out is through the exit of this passageway. Among the 108 abyssal emperors, the six-clawed demon emperor was ranked as 97th, while the ant emperor was ranked at 76th. Instead of rushing forward to join in on the attack, the ant emperor merely rested on the wall of the passageway and waited. As the first spearhead of the attack, their objective was to buy more time and get more of the normal abyssal creatures here to perish in battle. As a result, they would disintegrate into abyssal energy that would then contribute to expanding this black vortex, which was actually an alternate abyssal passageway created with the assistance of the humans on this side. As the passageway continued to expand, more and more abyssal emperors would be able to travel through it, and they were going to conquer the human world in one fell swoop. At the moment, the six-clawed demon emperor and the ant emperor were the only 2 abyssal emperors present, so they didn't constitute much of a threat. However, as the passageway continued to expand, more and more normal abyssal creatures were rushing out in a frenzy, and later on, other abyssal emperors would also be able to emerge through it. The Blood God Legion was completely oblivious to all of this. They merely continued to defend in an organized and orderly fashion while countless abyssal creatures rushed to their deaths before disintegrating into streams of abyssal energy. Have the radars discovered anything? Jiang Wangyun asked the investigation department. The Blood God Legion had the most advanced sensory and detection devices available in the entire Federation. At the moment, we can only see that there are vast numbers of abyssal creatures that are constantly emerging from down below, and there's also a powerful being that's not inferior in power to that big guy down there. However, the abyssal energy fluctuations are too violent for our devices to detect what's happening deep within the passageway, so we don't know the exact nature of the situation. All right, keep doing what you're doing. Jiang Wanyun's body swayed, and he arrived beside Blood One. Blood One rose to his feet before giving him a slight nod. Jiang Wanyun said in a low voice, "I can cover you, but won't you be alerting the abyssal plane by doing this?" A faint smile appeared on Blood One's face. This is not an issue of whether we'll alert the abyssal plane. If we can destroy any of their emperors, we'll be able to truly weaken the abyssal plane, and that's an opportunity that we can't afford to pass up. We don't know what the situation is like deep within the abyssal passageway, so we have to retreat after just a single attack to drag that big guy out of there. I'll be responsible for restraining it, and you'll be responsible for transferring it. All right. Jiang Wangyun nodded in response before his body flashed, and he appeared in the air above the abyssal passageway once again, releasing the high explosive bombs at a frequency of 300 per minute. Balls of scorching white light rapidly flew out of one circular cannon barrel after another, and 300 of these white balls of light were being launched per minute. Within each and every ball of light was what appeared to be a small metal ball, and when the scorching white light expanded to its maximal extent, the metal ball would explode. In contrast with soul missiles, high explosive bombs couldn't be launched over long distances, but in terms of explosive power, they could trigger chain reactions, so it was best to use them within a concentrated area, in which case they would produce a better effect than soul missiles. These types of soul tools were disposable items, and they were extremely effective against abyssal creatures. 300 high explosive bombs exploded, and the interior of the abyssal passageway was instantly illuminated by a vast expanse of scorching white light. Hordes upon hordes of abyssal creatures were being destroyed in the face of this white light, and countless streams of abyssal energy were sent flying in all directions. All of the abyssal creatures in the passageway were temporarily wiped out. At the same time, Jiang Wangyun hurriedly issued a series of commands, and the defensive line at the exit of the passageway was instantly relaxed. Behind the smoke screen provided by the scorching white light down below, a mirror that resembled a bright moon appeared behind Jiang Wangyun. When the mirror first appeared, it only had a diameter of half a meter. However, 3 soul rings then immediately lit up around Jiang Wanyun's body, and the mirror swelled to over 50 meters in diameter in the blink of an eye. A large number of coiled dragon patterns became clearly visible on the back of the enlarged mirror, and these patterns all seemed to have sprung to life. Violent energy fluctuations also began to appear on the surface of the mirror, and it was also right at this moment that a figure snuck soundlessly into the abyssal passageway before vanishing in a flash. The six-clawed demon emperor's 6 arms were raised above its head to protect itself from the high explosive bombs, and it wasn't bothered in the slightest to see so many of its brethren being destroyed. The more abyssal creatures that were killed, the larger the vortex would become, which would allow more of its brethren to enter this world, and also facilitate passage for more abyssal emperors, so it was actually quite glad to see the humans expending more efforts to kill these abyssal creatures. Of course, that didn't include itself, as it would take a very long time for an abyssal emperor to recover following their death. During this process, they would also be challenged by other powerful brethren, so they may not even be able to reclaim their position as abyssal emperors. Within the abyssal plane, there was an emperor on every level, and each emperor was entrusted with the core of that level. The cores would bestow upon the emperors superior powers and status, and if an abyssal emperor were to perish, its core would carry their energy back to the level that they came from. However, resurrection took time, and if one of its brethren were to find them and take their core during this process, then they would truly lose their sentience, and even their energy could be devoured by the new emperor. As such, normal abyssal creatures had no qualms about dying, but these abyssal emperors didn't dare to die for no good reason in case they were to be replaced by their brethren. Just as the six-clawed demon emperor was about to withdraw its 6 arms, it suddenly sensed a temperature change around its body. If it had to describe this sensation in a human way, then it seemed to be cold. It was then suddenly struck by the feeling that the space around it seemed to have become different, and that the surrounding space seemed to have been sliced open. There were clearly countless abyssal creatures around it, but in that instant, it was as if it had lost connection with all of these abyssal creatures. It was as if it had been enclosed in an isolated cuboid space, and even sound couldn't travel in and out of this space. What was going on? What had just happened? The six-clawed demon emperor was quite stunned by this sudden development. As an abyssal emperor, it possessed intelligence that was not inferior to that of a human, and it instantly that something was amiss. However, when it tried to struggle free from this space, it was already too late. 4 massive swords silently isolated the space around it and ensured it within. In the sky above, a beam of bright light shone down upon it, and in the next instant, the six-clawed demon emperor transformed into a streak of white light that rose upward, then vanished as if it were an immortal that had ascended into the heavens. Its gargantuan body didn't leave so much as a single trace behind. The ant emperor was appraising the situation up above with a cold expression, and it remained completely unperturbed by the sight of the violent explosions. However, right at this moment, it was surprising to see that 4 antiquated giant swords had suddenly appeared out of thin air. These 4 swords sliced through space with ease, and it felt as if the six-clawed demon emperor had been stuffed away into a packaging box. It couldn't even offer any resistance before it was drawn away as a streak of white light. Thanks so much for watching this video. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Also leave a comment down below with suggestions on what novels to read.